please subscribe and don't forget to press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video.
On to the other big story that we're tracking this evening. Strong protection of UIDAI servers is not enough to safeguard Aadhaar data. That's the Supreme Court's latest observation in the Aadhaar case. Hearing the matter today, the court also said that in the absence of a law, the data will continue to be vulnerable and could be exploited by private entities. The apex court red-flagged these concerns during UIDAI CEO Ajay Bhushan Pandey's presentation on the unique identity number. Ashmit Kumar has been tracking these developments. Ashmit, take us through the details of the courtroom action.
Well, it was day 2 of UIDAI CEO making his presentation before the Apex Court. And well, he invited some key questions from the Apex Court, from the 5-judge constitutional bench, which led, interestingly, to the CEO making an admission before the Apex Court that even before the Aadhaar Act came into being, well, there were private entities that were collecting data at the time of enrollment, and they didn't quite enjoy the same safeguards that we now have under the Aadhaar Act. So that was one key admission here, and it was in response to some key questions that were raised by the 5-judge constitutional bench. The question that was essentially raised was that while the CIDR, while the Aadhaar biometric data might be encrypted, might be secure in secure servers, the question raised is, it is a two-way street. What about data at the other end, which is data which is collected by agencies either for enrollment or number 2, either for authentication? Say, suppose a telecom company collects your data for authentication against the CIDR server. The question raised is that these are, at the end of the day, private entities, that this data is commercially exploitable, that this data can be used, in fact, can be monetized in many ways, and which essentially renders data with respect to your data, my data, the common man's data, does become vulnerable. That's the one question that was raised by the Apex Court. And in fact, it highlighted these concerns by pointing out that there is a vacuum in place as of right now. There is no mechanism, legislative mechanism. There is no law in place. There is no data security law currently in place. Of course, the government made a brief mention of course, the Justice B. N. Sri Krishna Committee, which is considering mooting coming out with the draft legislation. But broadly, the Apex Court driving home that point that as of right now, there is just no data protection mechanism available to the people of the country. What we now understand is that the petitioners have submitted a list of 20 questions that the government will have to come back and reply on, and that will be due at the next hearing. That's next Tuesday. Back to you.
So the Supreme Court, they're raising data breach concerns. Thank you so much for taking us through all those details, Ashmit. Now on to a big CNBC TV18 exclusive story. We learned from sources that the government may start inviting fresh bids for the Maharaja tomorrow. Remember, the government plans to complete divestment of Air India by the end of this calendar year. Sindhu Bhattacharya, who broke that story, joins us now with more details. Sindhu, what are you picking up from your sources?
So the sources are saying that the government intends to offer 76% stake in Air India, 76% stake in its low-cost international arm Air India Express, and all of the 50% stake that it holds in a ground handling joint venture called AI SATS. All of this is expected to be out tomorrow. The expression of interest for the sale is expected to be out tomorrow. What is clear from this information is that the government may not be immediately looking to offload its stake in the other subsidiaries of Air India, the other wholly owned ground handling subsidiary, the engineering subsidiary, and domestic arm Alliance Air. We still do not know whether the government is going to put out a substantial put off substantial debt from the airline into an SPV, as has been said earlier. Remember, the airline carries a debt of at least about rupees 50,000 crore, and there have been reports to say that this could also extend to about 70,000 crore. Earlier, Air India officials have said that about 20,000 crore of this debt is backed by aircraft assets and could possibly be still retained on the airline's books. The other information that we picked up is that the government is expected to maintain that any successful bidder has a net worth of about 5,000 crore rupees. This automatically means that not a single Indian airline would be eligible to bid for Air India unless it forms a consortium to conform to this net worth criteria. The other thing we are picking up is that the government is likely to ensure that employees of the Maharaja continue to be there even after the strategic disinvestment for at least 1 year, and a VRS is offered to them after that. So these are the broad contours of the sale. We do not know what the debt is going to be, and that could probably be a big determinant We are not also sure whether there's any reserve price that the government has in mind and if it plans to get a substantial amount of revenue from the stake sale. Back to you.
All right, Sindhu, thank you so much for taking us through all those exclusive details. Moving on, reforms initiated by the Mamata Banerjee-led West Bengal government in the sphere of ease of doing business has catapulted the state to the numero uno position in the first phase of rankings. The Bengal shares that spot with Chhattisgarh. Remember, this time around, the ease of doing business rankings will also take into consideration the feedback received from the industry while tabulating the final score. Rituparna Bhuyan joins us now. Ritu, the final scores will be out in a few weeks' time, but Mamata Banerjee can draw some solace.
Absolutely. This time around, ease of doing business rankings is divided into two parts. In first phase, 372 reforms. States report on that, how many of these 372 reforms they have been able to complete. And the results of this first phase show that West Bengal tops the list with a score of 99.73%. And hence, it shares the first position in the first phase with Chhattisgarh. In the second phase, you have three states, that is Chhattisgarh, that is Jharkhand, Madhya Pradesh and Haryana, and in the third phase, third position, you have Rajasthan and Gujarat. Now, what happened now is that World Bank is taking feedback from users of these reforms, and the score from this feedback of users will be added to the score from phase 1, and final rankings will be out in a matter of about 6 weeks. But the fact remains that as of today, West Bengal and Chhattisgarh tops the list. Last year, West Bengal was ranked 15th, but this year they seem to be, heading for a good position in the rankings, and we'll have to wait and see what the final rankings in the final rankings, what position West Bengal and other states have. With that, it's back to you.
But right now, Bengal and Chhattisgarh leading that list. Thank you so much for taking us through those details, Ritu. Now, in the deal space, pharma major GlaxoSmithKline is set to acquire Novartis' stake in their consumer healthcare joint venture. GSK is buying 36.5% stake in the JV from Novartis for $13 billion. In its statement, GSK said that it is also initiating a strategic review of Horlicks and its other consumer healthcare nutrition products to support funding of the transaction. Archana Shukla joins us with more. Archana, take us through the details of GSK's plan.
Well, yes. It's just a week after GSK pulled out of the $20 billion bid to acquire Pfizer's consumer business. It has agreed now to spend $13 billion to buy out Novartis' 36.5% stake in the consumer healthcare JV that they had made in 2014 and take global leadership. And to fund such a large transaction, GSK is intending to sacrifice its oldest nutrition drink brand, Horlicks, which is largely an Indian business. The company is now initiating a strategic review of Horlicks and other consumer nutrition products that would include products like Boost, and also an assessment of GSK's 72.76% shareholding in the GSK Consumer India subsidiary. That's a listed company in India. Now, for GSK Global, consumer healthcare contributes nearly 26% to their revenues, and of this, India contributes over 80%. So the total consumer healthcare revenues nearly in FY17 was 5,050 crores, of which India contributed about 4,400 crores. So, and for GSK Consumer Healthcare in India, the health food drinks category, which is Horlicks and Boost brands and biscuits and Foodles, has been the cash cow, contributing nearly 90% to revenues. Horlicks and Boost together are the leading malt-based drinks in India with a 56% market share, followed by Bonvita, Complan and others. The market has seen some headwinds. Growth has been slowed in the last 1 year or so post demonetization, and analysts say in a possibility when Horlicks as a brand comes up on the block, companies like Danone, who've been inching up their market share, and Nestle, who is still to make an entry in this malt-based food drinks, could be some of the interested parties for picking up that brand. We'll bring you more details as and when this story develops. Back to you.
Carry on to all the market action of the day. The Lal Street saw a good follow-up to yesterday's stellar rally, with the indices ending at over one-week high levels. The Nifty rallied 0.5%, with financials contributing over half of the index gains. Sensex rallied over 100 points. The bank slightly outperformed with gains of about 200 points. The mid-caps were the star of today's trading action, and that index jumped about 250 points today. But the stock of the day was Bandhan Bank, after it saw a stellar opening on its first day on Dalal Street. The new entrant saw its shares jump 33% soon after opening for trade. On to another CNBC TV18 exclusive. The SEBI board is to meet tomorrow, and sources tell CNBC TV18 that the regulator may ban trading of companies under the insolvency proceedings. SEBI may also look at empowering exchanges to delist companies that do not comply with listing rules. Yash Jain, who has been tracking that story, joins us now. Yash, tell us what more will the SEBI discuss tomorrow?
Well, the last SEBI board meeting for the financial year 2018, and the most important aspect would be any discussion or amendment as far as the insolvency and bankruptcy vertical is concerned. We are given to understand that SEBI is likely to consider a proposal with respect to bringing a trading ban on companies which go under insolvency and bankruptcy. Of course, it has been a popular demand from various players, but now it seems to be catching the eye of the regulator as well. Also, what I'm given to understand is that SEBI might consider the proposal of bringing some relaxation as far as the minimum public shareholding of 25% is concerned for companies which go under IBC, and letting the new promoter, the incoming promoter, hold and infuse more than 75% equity in these companies is concerned. And this is to ensure an effective turnaround of these sick companies. As far as the delisting of these companies which go under IBC is concerned, we are given to understand that SEBI might prove some relaxation there as well with respect to the reverse book building procedure, which is a part of the delisting norm. Coming to the next important point, which is with respect to the regulations on non-compliance of the listing requirements, we are given to understand that SEBI might give more powers to exchanges to essentially freeze the promoter shares in these companies which do not comply with listing regulations. Also, if there is a continuation which happens as far as non-compliance is concerned, then exchanges might also be given the powers to initiate delisting process for these companies. The third and the most important would be the whole buyback setup which we have. SEBI is looking to put a cap as far as how much of quantum can be offloaded in buyback. That is expected to come around 25%, and also it is looking to put a time interval between two successive buybacks from a same company, which we'll have to see what is the time interval, and which means that the company won't be able to come up with a successive buyback in that period of time.
So the SEBI there may crack the whip on bankrupt companies, but we'll have to wait and watch what comes out of the meeting tomorrow. Many thanks for those details, Yash. But GST collection data for February is out, and the government has garnered a little over 85,000 crore rupees, the lowest mop-up since December. Timsi Jaipuria joins us with more details. Timsi, this is of course just the first reading, but what is the reason for this slowdown?
Well, the GST collections this time again are not looking encouraging enough. For the month of February, government has garnered just above 85,000 odd crore rupees, to be precise, 85,174 odd crore rupees. What the government feels that these figures are a little lower than the last 2 months, where the collections were quite above than 86,000 odd crore rupees. But they say that this time this is below 86,000 odd crore rupees because there are less number of working days in the month of February, plus also businesses are not doing that well. And yes, not to forget, tax evasion is still happening. Government also feels that from April onwards, tax buoyancy will come back once e-way bill kicks in. Also, government has created a GOM to look into the composition scheme taxpayers because the government feels that a lot of misuse is happening under the composition scheme as well, and soon they will like to plug these loopholes. On the other hand, there is a landmark development on the GST front, where government's tax base has increased. Government is now having about over 1 crore indirect taxpayers under the GST regime, which is a huge success for the government, because when it comes to compliance, they now know there are more than 1 crore assessees to be assessed under the new indirect tax regime. Let's see what happens in the month of March, where the collections will be collected in April. But yes, being a transition year, these are a little disappointing figures, because the comfort zone should be around 90,000 odd crore rupees is still far away. We'll keep you posted.
Still with us on Reporter's Diary, it's been raining exclusives today, and this one is another CNBC TV18 exclusive. We learned from sources that Maruti has deferred its plans to launch its first fully hybrid vehicle, the S-Cross, in India. Now, the key reason for this move was the higher taxes being levied on hybrid vehicles under the GST regime. Remember, taxes on such vehicles were increased from 12.5% to 43%. Utkarsh Chaturvedi is here with all the details. Utkarsh, what is Maruti's plan going ahead now? What are your sources telling you?
Motown has been waiting for long when it comes to a tax cut on hybrid vehicles, and it was a matter of time before one of them rethinks their strategy. What we are picking up is that Maruti Suzuki has held the plan of its first fully hybrid vehicle, the S-Cross, which was codenamed YGB, and was supposed to be launched in 2019. The RFQs for the same vehicle was floated by the company and has been cancelled, is what we are picking up from multiple sources. Also, the current vehicles which have the micro-hybrid technology like the Ertiga, Ciaz, and also the current model of the S-Cross is also under the radar. Maruti will be relaunching the Ciaz and Ertiga with newer engines later this year and is still contemplating whether to continue the hybrid models in the same or not. The reasons are plain and simple. An increase in the taxes of hybrid vehicles has resulted in slump in sales. And what top management individuals in companies suggest us is that to make money in such high taxation on hybrid vehicles is not possible. But automakers, however, are still hopeful and have been raising concerns to the government, which till now has not resulted in anything concrete. Until then, you can expect more car makers to put their hybrid plans on the back burner. With that, it's back to you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for those details, Utkarsh. Now, New Delhi has become the first region to roll out BS6 fuel days ahead of the scheduled date. The centre had advanced the BS6 rollout in Delhi to April 1st, 2018 instead of 2020 in an attempt to reduce pollution. So what do the citizens of Delhi think about this move? Anshu Sharma finds out.
Lok Kalyan Marg, right opposite the Prime Minister Narendra Modi's residence at the BPCL and HPCL fuel pump. If you remember, last year in November 2017, the pollution levels in Delhi increased to an alarming levels. Oil Ministry stepped in and announced availability of BS6 fuel from April 2018. BS6 fuel is now available at all retail outlets of fuel, whether it's Indian Oil, BPCL, HPCL. There are 397 fuel pumps which are now compliant to BS6 fuel. These BS6 fuel will lead to a cleaner emission and which will help reduce pollution in the city of Delhi.
The level of pollution is going very much high in there, and it's really difficult for a individual to take a breath in such kind of environment. If government has taken such initiative, I really appreciate government.
I think it's a step in the right direction, and I really hope that it brings about the change that the government is expecting, because pollution is becoming a very critical issue for Delhi especially.
But industry experts say that full benefit of BS6 fuel will only be reaped when vehicles compliant to BS6 are out on the roads. The OMCs, or the oil marketing companies, are now looking to expand BS6 fuel to NCR region outside Delhi as well as other metro cities of India.